The Marriage Stone by Josephine Darcy. Chapter 39. Family Honor. Severus left his quarters and strode swiftly down the torchlit hall, but as he passed the dark corridor that led to the Slytherin dormitory, Severus realized that his evening was yet again going to take a turn for the worse. Lucius Malfoy was waiting for him, a cold smile on his pale face, his silver-headed cane gripped tightly in one gloved hand. "Lucius," Severus sighed, "what are you still doing here?" "My goodness, Severus," Lucius purred. "Is that any way to greet an old friend?" "I'm in no mood for pointless pleasantries tonight, Lucius," Severus snapped. Lucius just laughed softly. "Really, Severus? I would have thought that marriage to the lovely Mr. Potter would have improved your mood. I see it has not. Perhaps Mr. Potter is not so extraordinary as we have all been led to believe." "Spare me the innuendos," Severus growled. "Your son has said more than enough on the subject already." Lucius just shrugged and sighed rather dramatically. "Yes, Draco can be a bit crude on occasion. He gets it from Narcissa's side of the family, I'm afraid. But I hardly came here to exchange quibs about your marriage, Severus. I have business to discuss with you." "I'm not interested in any business you might wish to discuss," Severus replied, eyes narrowing. "I think my loyalties have been adequately declared." "Your loyalties," Lucius mused. "Yes, I suppose. But I do wonder precisely who it is you have sided with, Severus. Dumbledore or Potter?" "You think there is a difference?" Lucius just shrugged, tapping his cane against his thigh thoughtfully. "Dumbledore comes with an ideology and an agenda. Potter, on the other hand," he smiled suddenly, "that I can almost understand." "I had not realized how attractive the boy had become. I can hardly blame you for jumping at such an opportunity." Severus felt a cold anger seep into his veins at Lucius's words. The blond man looked amused and intrigued, something Severus did not like at all. "I find it very hard to believe you would share such an interest." Lucius laughed at that. "Oh, believe me, Severus, I'm not blind. My tastes have always run toward women. But Mr. Potter has an aura of power about him that I have not seen since the Dark Lord." Severus finished for him, glaring coldly at the man. If he thought to compare Harry to Voldemort, he was blind indeed. "Yes," Lucius agreed. "Since then." "What's wrong, Lucius?" Severus mocked. "Has the bloom gone off the rose?" Something strange passed over Lucius's features then, a shadow of unease Severus had never seen in the man. "The Dark Lord has gone mad, Severus." "He was always mad." "Not like this." Lucius shook his head. "This is something different, something unspeakable." Severus stared incredulously at the man. "Are you asking for protection, Lucius? You wish to join Dumbledore?" "No!" Lucius snarled, glaring furiously at him. "Join Dumbledore and his pathetic band of Muggle lovers. He would have us crawling on our knees and kissing the feet of Muggles before this all over." "How is that any different from—" Severus began, only to be cut off by Lucius. "Do not start with me, Severus. This is not about me or the Dark Lord. This is about Draco." "Draco!" Severus stared at the man in surprise. What was he up to now? "I do not need anyone's protection. I will take whatever steps I must to protect myself. But I do not want my son involved in this madness either. He's already getting strange ideas in his head." Severus found himself bewildered by the turn this conversation had taken. What could Draco have done to prompt this behavior in Lucius? What sort of strange ideas? Lucius looked vaguely ill with the thought. "Perversions," he sneered. "I think it must be the Black family blood. They have an impeccable pedigree, but their sexual tastes have always been a bit off. Bellatrix will spread her legs for anyone, while Narcissa seems to have sewn herself shut. And Andromeda," he shuddered in horror, "a Muggle of all things. She would have been better off going the way of Regulus than polluting her blood in such a manner." He smirked suddenly. "Did you ever tell your beloved order exactly how Regulus died? Or rather, what he died beneath?" Severus found his stomach churning with the memory, and he forced his face to remain emotionless. He counted the lie he told the Order about Regulus Black's death his one kindness towards Sirius Black, who likely would not have been able to handle the truth about his brother. Regulus, like Bellatrix, had a sexual appetite that grew obscene and out of control, to where even their rather public performances at dark revels could not fully sate his desire for the perverse. His life had ended at one such revel, when he'd been goaded by Bellatrix to quench the sexual appetite of a mountain troll. The creature had crushed Regulus's head to a pulp as it held the man down on the ground and pounded violently into him. By the time the other Death Eaters had pulled the troll off of him, there was little left that was recognizable of his face. Even to this day, the very memory made Severus sick to his stomach. Lying to the Order about Regulus's change of heart and desire to escape the Death Eaters only to heroically meet his end with the wand of the Dark Lord had been far easier than having to repeat such a story to anyone. "What does this have to do with Draco?" Severus asked, refusing to rise to Lucius's bait. He rather hoped Draco had not expressed similar tastes. "Draco will not admit it, of course, but he is beginning to desire things he should not have," Lucius explained. "Things that are beneath him. He needs to be taken in hand by someone strong enough to satisfy his desires, should they awaken. I have decided to marry him off." "Why are you telling me this?" Severus asked in surprise. Lucius frowned at him. "Surely that is obvious. I cannot marry him off to any of my current associates and hope to keep him from the Dark Lord's madness. No, he must go to someone on your side. But the problem, of course, is all a matter of pedigree. Your side is made up of filthy mongrels, your blood being one of the few exceptions." Severus had a sudden horrific thought. There could be only one reason Lucius was bringing this subject up with him, if he intended to arrange a marriage to someone in Severus's own family. "Oh, Merlin, surely you do not mean Julius." Lucius looked outraged at the thought. "The youngest son in a family of 5, are you mad? No, my son will go to a blood heir and a head of house, or no one at all." Relieved, Severus just shook his head. "Then why are you speaking of this to me?" Lucius smirked. "Because there is only one person on your side of suitable blood and position, and now, thanks to your marriage, he is a member of your extended family. I formally request that you present my proposal for the marriage between Draco Malfoy and Sirius Black." Severus just stared at Lucius in shock, not believing what he had just heard. So much for keeping his emotions from his face. He knew his stunned disbelief was obvious on his expression. "Are you mad?" he shouted. "Sirius Black!" Lucius just shrugged. "There is no one else on your side that is suitable." "Black intends to bond with Remus Lupin," Severus informed him. "Intends to bond," Lucius replied. "They are not yet bonded. And since, by law, Remus Lupin is little better than an animal, my proposal takes precedence over any understanding that might exist between them." "Tell that to the angry wolf that will tear your son apart." Lucius's fist closed tightly around the head of his silver cane. "If he tries, he'll be put down like the creature he is. In fact, if he makes one move toward my son, I will have a euthanasia order slapped on him so fast he will not see his next moonrise." "Lucius, this is madness," Severus protested. "Black will never agree to it." "Black has no choice but to agree," Lucius insisted. "My proposal is an honorable one, and without any legal impediment, Black has to accept or forfeit his family name." "He will choose to forfeit his name." "He will not," Lucius laughed. "Gryffindor or not, his name means something to him, I think. But beyond that, have you forgotten whom the family name would go to? The moment she possessed the title, Bellatrix would use blood magic against him. Sirius would be dead within a week. I think under those circumstances, even your pet werewolf would have to urge him to accept. Gryffindors are like that. And speaking of Gryffindor, Sirius is Draco's cousin. Surely the noble Gryffindor will not abandon his young cousin to the madness of the Dark Lord, if it were in his power to save him." Severus doubted Black would care about his cousin, but the threat of blood magic was a very real one, and a sickening dread filled his heart. "Lucius, do not do this. It will come to no good." But Lucius just glared at him. "My mind is made up. You will present my offer. I will hear no other arguments against it." And with that, he turned and strode swiftly away, heading toward the castle proper and the main doors of Hogwarts. For a long moment, Severus just stood alone in the hallway, staring after the man. He felt ill, dread filling his heart. This would not be good. Not at all. Oh, he didn't care so much about the sappy romance between Lupin and Black, not really anyway. Though what a sad thing it was that Lupin would lose out in the end after so many years of devotion. Pathetic, he decided, not sad. Oh, screw it, Severus sighed. Sad. It was a sad, sorry business all around, and while a stoic Slytherin might accept the situation and move on, Gryffindors had a tendency to fall apart in the face of such adversity. And Harry... Severus shook his head. What would Harry think? He loved his godfather, loved the blasted werewolf as well. He would not take this well. No one would, which was probably what Lucius had intended. Guessing by now that Dumbledore and the others had cleared the castle, Severus headed back to the room they had been meeting in. The others had only just arrived, and Severus paused momentarily at the door to glance around at those present. Along with Albus and numerous members of the staff who were no doubt anxious to hear the events of the last few days, Molly and Arthur had remained. Bill, Charlie, and Percy had returned with them, leaving the twins behind at Gryffindor Tower. But it was really Remus Lupin Severus was looking at, dreading and perhaps even fearing the task he had ahead of him. He could only hope that the werewolf would take the news well, but he wasn't counting on it.
"Everything all right with Harry?"
Albus asked when he noticed Severus standing in the doorway. Severus nodded and moved into the room, allowing Minerva and Flitwick to secure the room with a privacy charm.
"Well then,"
Albus said with a bright twinkle in his eyes,
"I'm guessing you and Remus have quite a story to tell us, especially if the behavior of your brother-in-law toward Harry is anything to go on."
Severus sighed. "You have no idea." He glanced at Remus, who just gave him an encouraging smile. Severus began recounting the events of the last few days to those listening. For the most part, they listened in silence, only occasionally asking for clarification. Phileas Flitwick asked twice what spell Harry had used to move the stone, and then just sat there with a somewhat stunned look on his face. He questioned him again on the spell the boy had used to seal the well. Severus finished up his tale, making certain to include the odd dream that Harry had had the night before the battle. Surprisingly, it was the dream that got the most reaction from Albus. The old wizard sat back in his chair, stroking his long beard thoughtfully. "My goodness!" Flitwick exclaimed when Severus was done with his story. "I have not heard such an extraordinary story in a long time. It would seem we may not be pushing Mr. Potter hard enough in our classes if this is any example of what he is capable of." "Agreed," Minerva replied. "That's a fine bit of spell work, to be sure. I knew the boy was strong, but this is unexpected." Albus laughed softly at that.
"Mr. Potter has a habit of doing the unexpected."
He looked thoughtfully at both Remus and Severus.
"Do you think he has any idea what the symbolism in the dream may have meant?"
It was Remus who answered. "No, he thought it had something to do with the Ravenclaw mascot."
"Well, regardless, this will certainly cause Harry more stress in the days to come,"
Albus sighed.
"By morning it will be on the front page of every wizarding paper in the world, and we must watch that Fudge does nothing to disrupt things. He will not take these events lying down. I'm afraid he'll see his chances of re-election slipping away and grow desperate. I am glad Sirius was able to return to the Winterlands. It will not be safe here for him for some time, I think."
Severus sighed, guessing that he could not put the rest of this story off any longer. "I do have one other bit of news, Albus, which no one is going to like," he began. All eyes turned toward him again. "Lucius Malfoy stopped to speak with me on the way here. It seems as if he has grown concerned with the Dark Lord's behavior of late and has decided to remove Draco from the Dark Lord's grasp." Albus looked surprised by this.
"He wants us to give Draco asylum?"
"In a matter of speaking," Severus agreed. "He has formally asked me to propose a marriage between his son Draco Malfoy and Sirius Black." "What?" Remus leapt to his feet, nearly knocking over the large armchair he had been sitting in. "That's ridiculous!" "Perhaps so," Severus agreed. "But he wants Draco in the hands of the light, and as far as he's concerned, the only person of sufficient pedigree on our side is Black." "Sirius will refuse!" Remus insisted in outrage, his voice rising in volume. A strange wave of magic moved through the room at his words. Not accidental magic like Harry so often displayed, but something else. Something raw and wild, as if all the occupants were gripped momentarily by the same burning emotion. Severus could see more than one person taking a step back from the angry werewolf. "He can't refuse," Severus informed him. "The two of you are not mated. He has no acceptable reason to refuse a marriage of this status. If he does, he'll lose his name and his position as head of house. The title will go to Bellatrix Lestrange, and I guarantee she'll use the Sang-Mort spell against him. And likely against Andromeda too. They'll be dead in a week. He has no choice but to marry Draco." "No!" Remus shouted, and that strange raw energy exploded around them, touching them all. They all saw the exact moment when their rage became too much for the werewolf, and his control snapped, his eyes turning completely yellow, his mouth twisting into a vicious snarl. The impossibly strong man lifted the large chair he had been seated in and threw it across the room. It shattered against the wall, causing Hagrid and Bill to duck out of the way. Before Remus could take another step, everyone in the room was trained on him. It was Albus's spell that struck him. Even the werewolf's natural immunity to magic was not enough to overcome the power of Dumbledore's magic. The man collapsed unconscious. A deafening silence settled over the room. It was Molly who finally rushed to the man's side, carefully turning him over and stroking the hair back from his face. "Oh, Albus," she gasped. "He did not just turn feral. Not Remus. He'll be all right, won't he?" Albus, however, looked deeply troubled.
"I don't know, Molly. Remus is one of the strongest men I know. I do not think he will let this get the best of him."
He frowned at Severus.
"Though you could have picked a more opportune time to tell him such news, Severus."
"A more opportune time," Severus growled, feeling out of sorts and frightened, though he would never admit it. "When would you have suggested, Albus? When I was alone with him so he could tear me apart without witnesses? Or perhaps I should have allowed Black to tell him, and give the wolf the opportunity to take by force what was being denied him, ruining even their friendship?" "But surely Sirius won't really have to marry that spoiled boy," Molly protested. "Neither he nor Remus deserves that. They've been through enough."
"I don't know," Albus admitted. "Perhaps some other solution may yet present itself. In the meantime, I think I had best get Remus down to the infirmary."
"And what about Black?" Severus demanded. "I have no choice but to present Malfoy's proposal."
"It is conceivable that it could take a few days to find out where Sirius is staying,"
Albus replied thoughtfully.
"And it is conceivable that after learning of his location, it may take a few days before you have the opportunity to speak to him in person. After all, such an important matter cannot be conveyed by letter, and certain security precautions would have to be taken considering he is wanted by the Ministry. I think it is safe to wait a while before informing him. Perhaps another solution will present itself by then."
"What will happen to Remus if he has gone feral?" Molly asked, her eyes frightened. Albus just patted her gently on the shoulder.
"Let us worry about that later, when we know more about the state of his mind. In the meantime, we had all best try to get some sleep. Tomorrow will no doubt be—"
He broke off and shook his head.
"unusual, to say the least."